This is a vision I saw Saturday, February 25th. I saw a tree standing extremely, extremely tall. One I don't recognize from anywhere I've ever seen or been. The bark on it was smooth, but it was so large it just looked like it was a bunch of trees joined into one. And it was tall, and the tops of it was full of luscious green leaves. And coming out of its sides were branches, and each branch held I would say, a sapling. And there were probably, I'm not sure how many branches came out, but there were more than six or more on each side of the tree. And the branches held the sapling sort of like in an orb, not touching or being connected to anything. But it just kind of flopped around in its little branch hand. And then the tree would take one and it would actually consume it and eat it. And then it would come out. They'd come out of the tree's root system. And at that point, somehow the branches were able to grow large, so large that they formed like trees coming off the sides of this main tree. And the trees, they began to be full of, the branches were first really, really full of leaves, incredibly full, and it just kept growing and growing into like trees coming off the side of this one main tree. And they were very full. At this point, the vision showed me the ground kind of next to this tree. And I could see it from underneath the ground. So I realized that I was taking on the perspective from underneath the ground. And the ground seemed like a layer of ice. And I can see the hands of a woman kind of touching the top of the glass, wanting out, like she was trapped underneath this ice. And then I saw her almost like she was starting to fall. And then up above the glass, I saw a man standing there. I could see him walking on top of the ice. And he could see that she had fallen down underneath this ice and was sort of trapped under it. And you can see him putting his hand down on the ice and trying to turn it to open it. But at that point, it wasn't opening. Anyway, and then I began to see her, and she was almost falling. The falling was like she was falling on her back, and her arms were kind of like outstretched and reaching all over the place. And the atmosphere was dark and purple. It was a different realm completely. I could see that right away. There were a lot of creatures I didn't recognize down there. And as she's falling from the sky, she falls into this water. And I see her go underwater, and there's like some sort of octopus or lots of things with lots of legs down there. And even like there was like a mermaid down there. When she came up, she was coming up for air. As soon as she came up for air, this octopus type creature grabbed her with one of his tentacles and ate her. And it went into some sort of like what looked like a stomach of some sort, but it was just like a circle. And once she was in there, she was like almost blind or numb, lethargic. Very like her brain was not functioning at any real capacity. It was just kind of numb. I like the word lethargic. It helps describe it. And all of a sudden I saw this school of what I thought to be fish at the time, looking together, swimming around this orb, swimming around this circle that was trying to get into her. And at this point I realized they were actually sperm, and they were trying to get into what was like an egg sac. And I watched them look around to try to get in, and then I watched them try to eat their way through. And finally one of the sperms got into the egg. And as soon as it got into the egg, it switched its form. It came through, and then immediately it turned into like a T-Rex dinosaur, which I assume is like a representation of a beast of some sort. And this dinosaur, this beast, came and immediately grabbed the woman, and I saw at this point that she was pregnant, and grabbed her belly and bit into it. As soon as he bit into it, I saw above, back up to where the man was. And this man was, he reminded me of like a Robin Hood type. He had like, I don't know, he just looked like Robin Hood to me. And the first part of this sort of took place where he was trying to get in. And I can see that, and this happened before she was bit, but he was trying to get into the ice, and he ended up like stabbing the ice with a sword. And once that happened, he had some sort of machine that almost looked like when you go ice fishing, you cut a circle hole. And when he cut through the ice, there was now a hole that he could get into this area. And it almost looked like it started to form some sort of like a whirlpool a little bit. But then it skipped over to watching her again. So at this point, as soon as the beast bites into the woman's stomach, you can see that the man had somehow gotten down. He had not. He had lowered down some sort of device, and it was really like a string, but it was like a fishing wire. That's how thin this thing was, what he used to get this beast. And it wrapped, he had lowered it down somehow, and it made it into that orb somehow. And as soon as he bit down, it was wrapped around this beast, and it dragged the beast up to the top. So it was like carrying it up like a pulley type of situation. And as soon as that happened, the beast began to sort of change, like shapeshift or change into different types of beasts. First, as soon as it lifted away from the woman, it turned into an elephant. Then once it broke out of the orb and started to be lifted up in the space between where the ice was and the water was quite a large space. So when the woman originally fell to the water, it wasn't a small fall. It was a very, very, very large fall into the water. Weirdly enough, it was two types of water. So that space that she fell into was water, and then when she fell even again into water, it was a different water. So it was two types of liquid. So like the sky space was liquid, and then she fell into water, if that makes sense. And then after he continued to pull up this beast, and it changed into like, alligator, dinosaur, just different types of creatures. And then he pulled it up away to where we couldn't see it anymore. And I don't know what happened to it, but it was no longer there. And this enabled the woman to be set free from this beast, she was trapped in, which I don't know what happened to that beast either. But as she was swimming in the second layer, which was the sky layer of liquid, you can see she was bleeding. And I had a fear that, she would be attacked by other beasts because of the blood. But they all just watched her instead of coming after her. They were everywhere. There were just so many weird creatures down there in this purpley black place of darkness. And they just watched. They didn't attack. They didn't do anything. And then she was almost to the top, and an arm came down and reached for her, and she grabbed onto the arm. When she was pulled out, I literally had a physical response to the freedom she had. I cried. I was just hysterically crying. I was so moved by that freedom that took place. It was unbelievably profound, that freedom. And once she was lifted out, she was immediately free. And her garment that she was wearing filled all the space. And it actually held in the garment the promised land. And the promised land was so beautiful that also made me cry. But it just showed the vast beauty of what was taking place in her garment of freedom. And that was it.